All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining our 5th edition or our June edition of Success Spotlight. So my name, of course, is Nolan Dude. I'm the Client Experience Manager for IdealTraits, and today we have Farmers Agency owner Brian Scott, who's actually been an IdealTraits client since February of 2018. So it's been 6 good years of having Brian as a part of the IdealTraits family, and excited to have him join us today to talk about his success towards hiring. So Brian's been a Farmers Agency owner since 2012, has been a Toppers Club member 10 times, and has been President's Council 5, so in the top 1% of farmers agencies across the country. Currently has a $12 million book of business, 18 staff members, and outside of his agency has 3 businesses that he also participates in: a real estate company, higher power marketing, and then also elite agency training, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about too as well, Brian. But outside of that, before Brian was an insurance agent, he was a musician, which I'm sure he'll talk a little bit about how he made the jump from being a musician to being an insurance agent, which is a question that I just asked him, but wanted to save the answer for all of us to hear. So, Brian, it's great to have you. Thank you for joining us and taking the time to share your recipe towards success when it comes to hiring.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Nolan.
Of course, man. So I guess we could jump right into it. Talk about that first, when you made the jump from being, I believe it was a guitarist, to becoming an insurance agent, and a scratch agent at that, to now becoming, top 1% of farmers agents in the country, right? Obviously that trajectory from 2012 to now, I'm sure has been something that's been awesome for you to experience. But talk about that initial, how you went from being the guitarist to being the insurance agent. I think everybody would love to hear that first and foremost.
Yeah. So I was a full-time musician. I was just me, solo acoustic guitar and vocals 3 to 5 nights a week at bars, restaurants, private parties, events, weddings, whatever it be. And I played so much that I kind of burnt myself out. 3 to 5 nights a week is just a whole lot. So I thought, if I'm going to be doing something, anything, if I'm going to be doing something that I love to do and I'm going to burn myself out, I'm going to burn myself out on anything I do.
Sure.
So it's like, what industry can I look at? So I was like, well, insurance. Everybody hates it and you can make a lot of money. So, and here we are. So I made that jump from musician to agent in 2012, start from scratch, zero, nothing. I hired my first person within the first 2 weeks. That was one of the best moves. And I just kept hiring from there.
Yeah.
My first 2 years were the hardest, of course, starting from scratch with no triple bonus that they get now, but we won't go into that.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's great too, because we have, I'm sure on here today, a lot of agents in a lot of different situations, right? New agents that are just starting out from scratch, similar to you did back in 2012, and agents that have been in the business for, numbers of years that are still looking for, tips and tricks when it comes to mastering hiring. So, you hired someone in your first 2 weeks, and then, throughout, as you scaled the agency to where it is now. When did I suppose that it click for you, or was it right off the bat to where it was, hey, I just need to have a hiring process? Or when did it really settle in to continually look for good talent, or how does that process work for you now, if that makes sense?
Well, it hit me at the very beginning, because at the very beginning, I started making cold calls myself. I just didn't know what else to do to generate leads. I just hit the phones.
Yeah.
And I would get probably 2 or 3 leads in an evening over 2 or 3 hours. And then I would have to call those leads back and close them. But then I quickly realized that when I'm calling them back and selling and closing, I'm not generating new leads. And when I'm generating new leads, I can't call people back and close it. So it was just a obvious, apparent problem to me that, hey, I need staff to help departmentalize and feed the assembly line and feed the machine, feed the beast. And I just kept adding on from marketing, sales, service, and in that order over the years.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me.
Makes sense. And I'm sure hiring changed tremendously back from when you first started doing it to where, it is now. So generally speaking, like in today's world, I think that the first thing that, agents will have to do in order to, start getting talent is creating job ads, right? So for you, what's that process look like? Do you put a lot of focus on the compensation? Do you put a lot of focus on a good job description that's unique? I'm sure, being an accomplished agent such as yourself, there's some mention of being a President's Council agency and these types of things. But when you go to create that job ad, is it you're trying to, again, put that lofty compensation plan? Is it a lofty benefits package? Are you focusing more on the description, or is there a specific way that you do it to attract a specific type of individual?
Good question. 2012, I didn't have IdealTraits, so it was definitely harder back then. But to
Yeah,
answer your question, yeah,
sure.
to answer your question, I do it a little differently. And again, this is what I do, and I'm not saying to do this. I'm just saying this is how I view it personally. I don't I don't fluff up the ad. I don't make it lofty. I don't make it
Sure.
overly attractive. To me, I like setting the right expectations for the right person. I don't want the candidate. This is just me. I don't want the candidate who's going to be looking just for the best one and have all these high expectations. And when they get in the office, they realize, oh, it's actually harder than that ad made it appear, or oh, it's actually I'm making less money than they claimed I could be making. I don't want that. I'd rather have the candidate who has a realistic, real world, lower expectation than your, I hate to say it, but entitlement mentality um, candidate, new person. I want the person who understands that they're going to struggle at the beginning, understands that they're going to make less money at the beginning, but they are willing to work their butt off to grow and build and learn their skills and build their skills in the agency. Again, that's just me.
Yeah. And I think that that's great too, because research shows as of late that compensation is generally, on average, right, across candidates, that is generally usually the fourth or fifth most important thing, right? The path to success, the people that they work with, and the work that has purpose generally means more, right? So I'm sure having that transparent outlook has, certainly caused some candidates to look a different direction, which I'm sure in your eyes would probably be interpreted as a good thing, right? But then also it's probably got some people to really latch onto that opportunity and be with you for a number of years because they've seen that growth and that investment that you've made into them, always being, I suppose, a transparent leader from the get-go, right? So I'm sure you'll be able to tell us if that's the case, and speak towards that just based off of the employees that you have now.
Absolutely. I said I don't I want to set the right expectations. That's what I'm big on. And of course, yeah, I'm going to lose possible candidates. I'm going to decrease my volume on the candidate pool, but I'm okay with that because I'm always hiring, and so we're always continuously hiring. So I'd rather have a lower stream, consistent, constant stream of candidates
Sure.
than just than hit it real quick and have an influx of um, wrong expectation candidates with entitlement mentality.
Makes total sense. And just a reminder for everyone who's listening too, if you do have questions for Brian that you want to ask, as obviously we get into the conversation, I encourage you to use the Q&A tab that's available. And we'll make sure that we'll try to get to all of your questions. But we'll continue ahead here, Brian. So creating that job ad, having it out there, setting that correct expectation, and then you talked about really always hiring. So is it a position where you always have job ads up and that are out there and always looking for, just good qualified talent? Or is there a strategic part of the year where maybe you are a little bit more aggressive or only target during that time? I guess, speak to that. Is it an always be recruiting mentality, or is it, here and there?
Well, the sales phrase, always be closing, ABC,
Yeah.
always be hiring,
Yeah.
right? Sales is a numbers game, right? Staffing is also a numbers game. We know this,
Yeah.
okay? Always be hiring. And the problem that many agents that I've observed, and even I've experienced myself because I've done it, is that agents will wait for someone to leave, for someone to be terminated before they start the recruiting and hiring process. But by then, it's it's too late because it's going to take 2 3 months to recruit and hire someone, and then another 2 to 3 months to train them up to speed. And so now we're 4 to 6 months later, and we're behind the game. So I always said, always be hiring, always be growing, always try to have a plus one. Because if you have a plus one, then you're ahead of the game. And guess what? They're not going to remain a +1 for very long, because you're going to find something for them to do. You're going to put them to work. You're just going to increase your production when you have a +1. But every agent that I talk to, and again, even myself sometimes, but it seems like every agent says, "Oh, I just need to hire one more person. Yeah, I'm looking for one more person. Yeah, I'm looking for two more people." They're always behind the ball. Get ahead of it. At least try to get ahead of it to stay on par. So always be hiring. And to further answer this question, like, well, how do you know what to hire for? Well, if you departmentalize, like we train and like we teach in the elite agency training system, it helps you understand and know what to hire for. So we have three departments: marketing, sales, and service. Marketing are staff who just generate the lead and build quotes in the system. Sales, well, they call back those already quoted and interested leads and close them. Service, they submit those new sales and service existing book of business. So here's my point: is that how do you know what to hire for? Well, if you don't, if your salespeople don't have enough leads, call back and close, well, then you need to work on your marketing department to generate more leads. Okay, hire a marketing person, and that person is either experienced in phones, telemarketing, and or data entry. We have just a data entry ad up all the time because we need people to build the quotes for us. Take it another further. So let's say you have the good problem to have of having too many leads, and
Yeah.
you don't have enough salespeople to call back and try to close them all. Well, that's an obvious problem. You need to work on your sales department, and your hire a salesperson to come in and help close those leads. And then, of course, if your service people are drowning in service tasks and service calls, or the agent themselves is having to do service work, well, of course, you need to hire a service person to come in and do service work. So if you break up into departments, you know exactly what you need to hire. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think that's great because a lot of times you'll hear that, oh, I'm looking for a blend of a CSR and a sales rep. And it's like, well, that doesn't really work in particular, right? Because you need someone, if you're looking for someone to bring in a lot of premium, they need a specific type of personality. And if you're looking for someone to, cross-sell and upsell and give a lot of good support to your current clients, that's a different type of personality, which I'm sure we'll get into the personality assessment too as well. So David had asked a two-part question. So the first one is, what is the latest feature of IdealTraits you are finding value and leveraging the most? So if you want to go with that, I think that'd be a good answer to the first part, and then we can get to the second.
The latest feature of IdealTraits you're finding value and leverage.
Like the feature that you are leveraging the most right now, I suppose, or it could be one that you've really throughout the 6 years that you've been with IdealTraits, Brian, could be the same thing, could be consistent.
Well,
But if there's
for me, it's two things. It's the post to all the job boards, and I don't have to do that. I don't have to keep up with it, and the management of it, the process flow, and then of course the second thing is the assessment. I love the assessment, and we'll talk about that. We can talk about that now or later if you want, but we use the assessment in a particular way. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I think it does. And then the second part to the question, actually perfect transition, is how valuable is the assessment in your ability to identify the right fit?
Very valuable. We use the assessment. I read every interview that we have. I read the assessment, the entire assessment before we go into it, and I'll actually read it as we're in the interview, and I'll read it aloud to the candidate. I hope that's okay.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll read it to the candidate. I'll say, hey, it says here that your type of personality is strong in this, and they do good in this and that, that. Is that true? And they're like, yeah, that's exactly me. And then but I'll continue and I'll read the parts that are concerning. I'll say, hey, it says here that this type of personality has general struggles with this thing here. What do you think about that? And they're like, you know what? Yeah, sometimes I do tend to struggle with that. And it opens them up. And I said, well, tell me more. What else do you struggle with? What else are strengths? Like it helps the conversation in the interview. And we really there are a couple, one or two personality types that I try to steer clear of. I can't remember exactly what they were. One of them says that they'll interview a lot, and they'll appear like a good candidate, but they maybe not so much because they interview a lot. I can't remember which one it was.
Sounds like
But
you're describing a networker.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That has helped me really look at somebody hardcore before I try to hire them on it. And
Sure.
here's another thing I do with the assessment. I have all my current staff people, I had all my current staff people take the assessment. And so I'll read through it. And so I get an understanding of what the person will be like based on my current staff. Does that make sense? So somebody
Totally.
comes back as a perfectionist. Oh, well, they're just like so and so in my office. Oh, well, I know exactly how they're going to be. So have all of your staff take the assessment. One, it's kind of fun. They get to read and they kind of see. And then you get a reference of what
Yep.
people are based off your current staff. Here's another thing I do with the assessment. And I've heard of a couple of other agents doing the same thing. We use the assessment as a weed out tool in the hiring process. Have you heard of this, Nolan?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Okay. Let me explain this weed out tool.
Yep.
We try not to continue any of the hiring process unless they've completed the assessment. If they are not serious enough and they're not serious enough to complete the assessment, then they're not serious enough to have an interview with us. They can't take 5, 10, 15 minutes to do a simple assessment. I don't even look at them. I don't care. I don't want them. Do the assessment or you're not interested. You're not serious enough for me. And so it weeds out the tire kickers of candidates. So once they do the assessment, then we'll continue. So that's how powerful the assessment is for me, at least, in what we do here.
Yeah. Yep. And we heard that in Success Spotlight number 3 with Jason Kilgo, who talked about how the assessment is a good indication of someone's genuine interest in the role itself, right? And I think the word or the phrase you used there is tire kickers, so at that point, I mean, if you get some resumes and you see one that's abundantly qualified, are you making an exception to the rule there, or are you still using that as the baseline or is the rule the rule?
Well, that's a good question. I'll make an exception if we see a good person. And more of an applicable question here is, what about a referral? Like a referral from a business partner, referral from family, referral from friends, referral from existing staff. We will look at them, maybe chat with them on the phone, maybe not. But even with referrals, we will email the link to the assessment to them and just tell them, hey, looking forward to talking with you. Hey, then the next step is complete this assessment. Once that's done, then we can chat. So even with referrals, we make them do the assessment. And if they don't do the assessment, then even the referral is not interested enough and not serious enough to go through the process.
Yeah, makes total sense. So then it sounds like that assessment is a part of your processes. They apply, whether it's through the job board or through IdealTraits or whether it's a referral. The first step is the assessment, and then you proceed with the formal interview. Is that how I'm understanding the process works, or are you communicating with them before the assessment at all?
Okay, here's the entire process. They do the assessment, they complete the assessment, that we still don't call or text them. We email them back and say, hey, great, thank you for completing the assessment. The next step in the process is to call our office for an initial phone interview. With me, we don't even call them. We don't even text them. We just email them saying, call our office for an initial phone interview. Why do we do this? It's a further weed out process. What percentage of people do you think actually call our office? Any guess?
Oof, 20%.
It's 10 to 30%.
All right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then if they actually call our office, we talk with them for 5 minutes or less. Why do we do that? Because we want to make sure that they can communicate, that they can articulate their thoughts, that they can speak correctly, that that they have an interest and a desire and all the things that we can tell initially from a phone call. If they don't have that, we'll say, okay, well, thank you. Thank you for the phone call. We'll let you know. Send them a declination email later on. But if they
Yeah.
can talk and speak and articulate their words and thoughts, we will say, hey, great. Thanks for calling in. Let's schedule an in-person interview. And then we'll schedule the in-person interview. It's a further weed out process. How many people do you think actually show up to the interview?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's 30 to 40%, which still blows my mind. But people don't show up for the interview. So during the interview, then of course we open dialogue, ask questions, and I read through the personality traits with them. And then we still don't quite hire them just yet, unless they're awesome and we just really love them. But we'll have them sit in the office. We'll have them sit in the office amongst the staff for anywhere from 10 to 45 minutes, just depending.
Sure.
But that allows them to understand what's going on, allows them to hear what's going on, see what's going on, allows them to interact with the current staff, see if they fit in with the culture. Culture is everything. So if they do well, they like it, they get an idea of the job, we bring them back into the room and then go from there. That's the process.
Makes sense. Yeah, and it seems like, again, a thorough process, which has been a consistent trend that we've seen across now all 5 of the success spotlights, to make sure that the candidates, truly want it, right? And I think sometimes you'll hear those situations where potentially agents will hire people on the spot, right? And maybe in that first interview, which can be a very dangerous game. Sometimes can work out, sometimes cannot, right? But I think that laying out the process like that is great. So in terms of, I guess, with the insurance industry, of course, for a sales role and a service role, need to be licensed. So where do you stand on hiring unlicensed talent? Is it something where you will help a candidate go through the process of getting licensed and obviously train them as such? Or are you only looking for licensed candidates or only looking for unlicensed? Or are you open to both? Where do you stand there?
Short answer is I'm open to both.
Sure.
I don't really care. I mean, it's nice if they're licensed, right? We don't have to go through the whole
Yeah.
process. But from my experience, that I'd rather hire the right person. And we have a saying in the training that says, hire for what you cannot train. You can get somebody's license, but you can't train personality. You can't train work ethic. You can't train motivation. You can't
Yeah.
train certain parts of communication and internal desires. So the license is not that big a deal to me. Yeah, it's kind of a pain. It's not fun to go through that, but we do it all the time.
Yeah.
And I've licensed kind of also means experienced, right? They have experience in the industry.
Yep.
And that's another question. Do you prefer experienced people versus green people who've never been in the industry? And short answer for me is I prefer the latter. I prefer people who have never been in the industry. I've had better luck with people who have not been in the industry. Probably because the people who are experienced and have had it in the industry, they've been with other agents, other companies. They've developed bad habits. They have developed the wrong expectations of what they have previously experienced. And so I would rather start from the beginning and train them my way with my training in the elite agency training way and mold them from the very beginning to what I know to work, and I know what is effective and efficient. Hopefully that answers your question.
Totally does. Yep. And then, of course, something that's become more popular over the last couple of years has been remote, right? And having a staff of 18. Are you with remote? Are you only hiring in office? I'm sure you have you talked a little bit about culture. I'm sure you have a specific culture that you look for at your office. So is it more of where you have all 18 in the staff? Do you have a mix of remote and in office, or how does it work for the Brian Scott Agency?
For my other businesses, I do have people who are remote, but for the insurance agency, I don't have anyone remote. Well, I take that back. I have one part-time marketer who just builds quotes for me remote. She got offered another job, but she said, "Hey, I can still build quotes, and I know how to build quotes, and can I do it from home?" I said, "Sure, fine." but everybody else is in the office. And I prefer that. I prefer in the office. We're big on culture. We're big on communication. We get to hear each other in our office. We learn from each other. We have a good time with each other. I I know I probably need to open up to remote. I know I've heard of many other agents having good success with the right people in remote areas and working remotely, and I'm reluctant to do so, but I
Sure.
know I need to look into possibly doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we talked yesterday too. You had mentioned that you're mixing some things at the office to make room for 5 more to try to get to 23. So currently hiring as you have recommended. So
Always be hiring.
yeah, always be hiring. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a cubicle company come in and tear down my old ones that are just unnecessarily big and come in and bring smaller ones to fit more desks. I
Yeah.
guess I should probably look at moving, but I got another 2 years on my lease, and this is a cheaper option for now. So,
Sure. Yeah. Perfect. All right. And then we have an audience question here from Michael. I think going back to a little bit when you were talking about your current employees and figuring out where they needed to go. So at the renewal point, does your service team do the remarketing as well? Is the question.
oh, remarketing to
Yeah.
existing staff, defectors. I'm assuming all the above.
I think it
I'll
may
try to
be
answer.
to non-renewals. So at the renewal point, if someone non-renews their insurance, maybe with your office, is your service person the one reaching out to them to get their policies back, or how does that process work? And Michael, feel free to, if we have it wrong, feel free to let us know. Oh, sorry, requote because the rate increased or win back. So
Oh
um,
yeah. So
yeah,
um, so rewrite. Yeah, service. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you're talking about rewrite, but yeah, service will call for a rewrite. But for win back defectors, then it's kind of a mixture. My service team will make a task 11 months out from cancellation, and either they'll call them back, the service people will call them back, or they'll just reassign that task to a marketing staff member, and the marketing person will call them back. So either one, we kind of tag team it. Some of my service people have a relationship with some of the clients, and so they will call them back themselves.
yeah,
And some service people don't really have a relationship, and they'll just reassign it to marketing.
yeah. And do you have a certain expectation for, I guess, your main sales team? Um, do you have an expectation of them of a certain amount of quotes they have to do a day, or amount of calls they have to make, or is it call time? What's that expectation look like for your producers on a daily basis, or is it tracked weekly, or how does it work for your office?
Good question. Remind you, my salespeople, I further departmentalize sales into sales and marketing. So my sales closers don't build quotes. I mean, they can if they need to, and they can if they will, but all they do is call back already quoted interested leads and close them. So their metrics are we try to get to at least 40 to 50 calls a day, and then at least a couple of hours talk time a day, very least. But you'll know if they're not doing what they need to do because we departmentalize, because we have separate departments, and because I feed my salespeople leads. My salespeople get anywhere from 8 to 12 new leads per day. Those pile up every day, and then now they're having to follow up and call back what's being piled up from 8 to 12 new leads a day. Sometimes it's 15 or more leads in a day. They don't have time to market. They don't have time to generate leads. They don't have time to build quotes. All they have time for is calling back and closing.
Yeah,
So if they're not selling at least 30 to 40, maybe even $50,000 of premium per month, there's something wrong. So it's very apparent because they're getting so many leads and I'm feeding them so many leads. They better be closing 40 grand a month at least. Last month, one of my top sales guys did over $100,000 in new business premium, all personal lines, by the way. He stayed on
mm,
the phone. His talk time was up to 3 to 4 hours a day. He was making 50 to 80 calls a day. So The marketing side, let's transition to that. They are required or expected to build at least 10 quotes a day. At least 10 quotes a day, build 10 quotes. And they prep those quotes for the sales staff. And guess what? Departmentalizing like that will help with personality types. Someone who likes just doing computer work and data entry does not really like to sell. Someone who likes to sell and is good at sales does not really enjoy or really like doing data entry and building quotes. It really helps with the personality types. And guess what? It also helps with compensation because I can pay people differently based on their job. Pay someone probably a little bit lower rate for building quotes and data entry than someone who is a sales killer and knows how to use the sales training and the psychology of sales and how to close, which is hard to train, much harder to train than training somebody to build a quote. I probably went down a rabbit hole a little farther than expected, but hopefully that answers your question.
No, it definitely answers my question. And something that came out from the audience from it is talked a lot about, I guess, what your sales and marketing team is doing on a daily basis. Are you subscribed with internet leads? Do you have a specific, way that you go about that, or is it just the marketing that you do from your office?
We do internet leads. We do telemarketing. We do age leads. We do some referrals, not a whole lot. And we've done pretty much everything else, but those I've transitioned into those because those are usually the higher ROI for me. So we're more of the grind. We're more of the call back and close. I know many agents are really into the networking, and they do really well. To me, personally, this is just personal to me. I don't really enjoy that. I don't like smoozing. I like the numbers game. I like the calling. I like the closing. I like getting on the phone and just hammering it. But many agents hate that, and then vice versa. So all marketing works. It just depends on personality. Depends on how your agency is structured. It depends on many factors. So it works on a spectrum. It's not does it work or not. It's just how well does it work for you and your area and your clientele and your personality and what you like to do.
Makes sense. And then Michael came with another question here. Does the marketing team collect the data from the client? An example would be like specifics about the home.
The short answer is yes. So they will collect all that data. It depends on where it's coming from. So let's say somebody calls in from a lead or purchase lead or call transfer, whatever it is. They'll gather all that information and put it on our quote sheet. The quote sheet that we have, a digital quote sheet that they fill out and we provide in Elite Agency Training. But if some of our marketing sources, depending on where it comes from, already has a lot of that info, and so we'll call to verify that we can get a hold of them, verify it's the right phone number, verify it's the right address, the right number of vehicles, right number of drivers, whatever it is, and so they'll just verify some of the information. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, makes sense. Perfect. And I think this would be a good point to segue into that because, once you have that person hired after the interview process, they've gone through it, that thorough process, you've established that they're the right fit for the role, you've hired them, then the next step is the training, right? So, again, obviously being an agent for the last 12 years, top 1% in the country, you have a training process that obviously works, being able to have 18 employees and grow your book of business to where it is, and so successful to a point where you've been able to open Elite Agency Training, which I think is a good point for us to talk about a little bit, both on how where you're at with your agency has allowed you the opportunity to do that with the staff that you have at the office, but in addition to that, having a process in terms of training that works, because a lot of agents will hire people and then they'll have someone there for a week and then they'll fall off, right? And sometimes it's just because maybe the candidate wasn't ready, right? But sometimes it's because the training isn't, and the onboarding process isn't good enough, right? If we're being real, transparent and honest. So, over the last 12 years, putting together your training process, what did you identify some of the things that, need to be there in order to help people be successful? And then, feel free to tell us a little bit about Elite Agency Training too, as well.
Yeah. I can guarantee that most, if not every agent on this call has either consciously or subconsciously not wanted to hire because they know what's coming next. They know the training portion is coming next.
Yeah.
And I know every person on this call has had that at some point, including myself. And I got to the point where I got sick of training and sick of saying the same things over and over again, and repeating myself over and over again on the training, only for half of them to leave in, like you said, a week or a month or a couple months, whatever it is.
Sure.
So I said, there's got to be a better way and a better efficient use of my time. So I started building out training videos to record what I'm saying. So I don't have to repeat myself. I did screen recordings of how to use the script, recordings of how to do almost everything. And so I thought, wait a minute, I cannot be the only agent with this problem. So I developed it out to use for every agent. And then I developed training section for the agent owner on the business level concepts. So there's two sides, two included portions of the training. There's the agent owner course, where we talk about business mindset, departmentalization, like I was talking about a minute ago, but we go into detail, depth about why and how to do it. We talk about staffing, all about staffing, all the things I've ever known, used, tried over the years. Talk about marketing and lead sources, the good, the bad, the ugly, the pros, the cons of all the marketing I've ever done, tried, used. And then it trains the staff. It trains the staff from the very beginning of the basics of insurance, the glossary, the definitions, the home coverages, the home basic coverages, the home detail coverage, the home included perils, covered perils, excluded perils, optional added coverages, everything. Then we train marketing activities that don't necessarily require a license, things that you can just call and gather information, build a quote in the company system, and then prep that lead for sales to close. Then we train on sales. We train extensively on sales. Sales is one of the hardest ones to train because you're just trying to get in people's mind and change the neurons on how to think. So we do have a script, it's a digital script of what to say. And that's most sales training, but we train on the harder and more impactful and more powerful side of sales, which is the tonality, how to say things. How we say things is far more important and powerful than what we say. So we dig in so deep into the psychology of sales with tonality, rapport, the techniques of training, the techniques of sales, excuse me, how to close, the confidence of close, the assumptive close, which is the most powerful way to close. We
Yep.
go over all that. We also train on DYL and agency Zoom if agents use those. And we also train live. My agency over the past several months has been submitting over 30 life apps a month using our life script, the Elite Life script, and the life training within the system. So I use it to train my own staff. I actually hired 2 new salespeople, and they're going through the training right now. And Nolan, you mentioned that agents just hire and they don't train. Well, one of my sales guys came from another, I can't remember where it was, but came from another agency. I think it was an independent. But they had hired him and said, hey, here you go. Here's a phone. Start calling and closing. It's like, I didn't know what I was doing. And he said he's gone through about half the training. He's like, man, I've learned more from this training than my entire time over there. So it really is powerful. I'm super excited about it. It's helping a lot of agents already. I know one agent, I was telling you, Nolan, that one agent, there's a smaller agent, an agent with 2 staff members. She told me that she has seen an increase of $10,000 of premium per month. Good for her. That's what, $1,200 commissions increase per month. That's almost 5 times the return on investment of the training every month. Another agent, say again?
That's huge.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Another agent was saying that her sales producer was doing about $10,000 to $12,000 a month on average. After the training, she was doing $50,000 a month or more. That's an increase of 40 grand in premium per month, which is about $5,000 a month in commissions more, not including bonus. That's a 17-time return on her investment of the training course in 1 month. One more thing, the life. I had another agent hire a life sales producer. The agent got the sales producer on the live training, went through the live training section. They started calling. On the 8th phone call, not the 8th person they talked to, but the 8th phone call, they got a life application. And then the next day they got 1 or 2 more. And the agent didn't have to train anything. I was like, yes, that's my goal, is that agents don't have to train so much, and they can just utilize this to help train their staff and free up the agent's time to do other things that they need to do. Another agent was telling me that they got their staff on the training, and the agent was able to sell 3 household sales that week and 3 life applications because she didn't have to spend time training the new staff. I'm sorry, I'm getting super excited. I get excited talking about it. So I
No,
love
you're
it.
good. You're good.
Uh,
And we did receive a question too.
okay.
So Todd had asked if the training is geared to farmers agents for farmers systems.
Currently, it is not company specific, but there are plenty of hints of, oh, hey, many companies, some companies have this, some companies have that. So there's a lot of hints of farmers in there. Now, we do plan on making company specific training. And of course, I'll make the training starting in my own backyard. And for example, we currently don't have the marketing section. The only thing we
Yep.
don't have in the marketing section is how to build a quote in the farmer system. We're
Yep.
about to, we're working on developing that training of the screen recordings on how to build quotes in the company system. So I'll have company specific training for certain companies, certain agents. Good
Yeah.
question, by the way.
Yeah, perfect. And just so everyone's aware too, in the chat, you should be able to, or I'll put it in the Q&A section so everyone's able to see it.
Nolan,
yeah,
I heard, I want to
yeah,
make a, we didn't mean to cut you off. I want to make a point.
no, good.
To talk about
Yeah,
always be hiring. Okay. And I
yeah,
talked about how hiring is a numbers game. I currently have 18 staff, but pop quiz or just a fun guessing game. How many people do you think I've hired over the past 11, 12 years of business? Any guesses?
Ooh, man, 11 years at 18 now, 42,
Over 90.
over 90.
Over 90.
Yeah.
So I've hired over 90 people, and 18 are just with me still. So I did the math, and it comes out to hire an average of hiring someone every 2 months. How does that blow your mind? That speaks volume on always be hiring. But here's another point I want to make. That's just the people I've hired. How many people do you think I've been through, talked through, processed through? I don't know the number. It's probably over 1,000 easy.
Yep.
I'm just saying, guys, hiring and staffing is a numbers game. So keep on it. And IdealTraits has helped me a whole lot through this process. Very, very effective and powerful. Another quick elite agency training pro tip I want to mention. I hope it's okay. We go over a little bit on time, but I think you're going to like this.
Of course.
Pro tip. And agents have told me that this is one of the best hiring practices that they've ever received in the hiring. Hire in multiples. Hire 2 or more people, even at one time, even if for just one position. Hire in multiples. Why? Because inevitably, one of them probably statistically will flake out, not show up, not work out, not be a good fit. But hopefully, you get to keep the other person that you hired at the exact same time. But then you've maximized your time and efficiency because you've hired them at the same time and you've trained them together. right? Hire in multiples. And then you can tell the people, I make the joke that you can tell them that, hey, whoever does the better job gets to keep the job, right? Pit them against each other. Let them fight it out to whoever gets to keep the job. I'm joking. Don't do that. Just kidding. But that would be fun. That would be very interesting to see. It'd be like the Hunger Games of insurance.
Yeah.
But let me tell you a quick story. Is it okay if I keep going?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I will tell you a quick story of how and when I hired 4 people at one time for one position. I hired 4 people. Okay. How many of those 4 people do you think stuck around after 4 to 8 weeks?
I'm gonna go with 2. 1. Yeah.
One stuck. Okay. Get this. That guy went on to become the top selling agency producer in the state of Texas in the company.
Wow.
Okay. But I'm not done yet. Here's what's going to blow your mind. And it still blows my mind when I think about it, when I talk about it.
Yeah.
If I did not hire all 4, I would not have hired that one guy because he was the wild card. The other 3 had better resumes, better experience, better fit. And if I didn't hire all 4, I wouldn't have hired the guy that made a lot of sales over many, many years. Top producing agency producer in the state of Texas in the company. Blow your mind, right? Always be hiring and hire in multiples. Wanted to mention that.
Yeah. No, and that's a powerful message for sure, right? Because sometimes as you mentioned, it's not always the candidate that you expect, right? Because oftentimes when we think of a perfect hire, it can be the person with a license, with years of experience, with a fluffy resume, right? But
Yeah.
similar to our CEO Kevin Melnick, he sold his agency 2 years ago to someone that he hired with no insurance experience, was working at McDonald's as a manager at the time, and now owns that mega agency, right? So it doesn't always have to be the candidate that we always think is the most qualified that works out to be the top producer in the state of Texas, which is an awesome story. So Brian, I think we've covered, I know we've covered a lot of great things in terms of, most importantly, always be hiring, which I know we've talked about really throughout the last 48 minutes, right? Be open to both licensed and unlicensed talent, right? Make sure that you have a good training program in place to support the employees that you're hiring. And I think the expectation has to be that no matter what you do, sometimes the candidates aren't always going to work out, right? And having that expectation that that's the case. So as I always do at the end of each Success Spotlight, Brian, I'll turn it back over to you. Before I do that, though, I know that I threw the link for the Elite Agency training in there. Brian talked a little bit about that. If you want to check out what they have to offer in their program, please, I recommend that you do so. And then below that, I did put a link to the previous Success Spotlights. If you're joining us for the first time, or you've been to maybe 1 or 2 and missed some others, all of them are in that YouTube link below, and you'll be able to watch ones that you missed or that you want to check out. But at the end here, I'll turn it over to you, Brian. What's your last piece of advice to an agent that's looking to bring on some staff, and anything else that you'd like the audience to know?
That was pretty much it. It's just always be hiring. Staff is a numbers game, and don't let the training portion prevent you from hiring and building and growing your agency, because the key to success in this business is a big part of it is staffing, as we all know. But the Elite Agency training can and will help you. It'll take a load off of you. It'll train 60, 70, 80% up to full knowledge working capacity, regardless of what company you work for, whether it's captive, independent, doesn't matter. It can help. It will help. So we have an ongoing running promo discount. If you wanted to try it, you can reach out to me. If you want a tour of it, you can. You can go to eliteagencytraining.com, but we have a discount for 50% off the first month or 20% off the first 3 months. Either one. I'm trying to get it to where it's a no-brainer, low risk. I mean, it's not $5,000 or $6,000 investment risk up front. So There's no minimums, no contracts. It's normally $297 a month. So if you like it, keep going. If you don't like it, you don't like me or my style of training, or just don't like my face, then you don't have to keep going.
Fair enough.
But yeah, we can work on that, and reach out to me anytime. That's all I had, Nolan. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you to everybody who joined us today. Again, Brian Scott, 12-year farmers agent, top 1% in the country, and feel free to reach out to him for any hiring advice, I'm sure, as well as any training advice, and I'm sure he'll be able to help with both. So, Brian, thank you again. It's been great having you, and I look forward to catching up again soon. All right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks a
Take
lot.
care, everybody. Have a good one.